Today I'm going to be discussing Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery. I read the Green Gables edition. Before I begin this book review, I'm going to be giving you some background knowledge about this book because it is a classic. Published in 1908. So first of all, Lucy Maud Montgomery was a Canadian author from Cavendish, Prince Edward Island, Canada. She lived from November 30th, 1874 to April 24th, 1942, which means that she wrote books around the late 19th century and early 20th century, and Anne of Green Gables is one of them. It is her most popular novel out of the 24 novels published by her, 530 short stories, 500 poems, and 40 essays published by her. So let's begin talking about this book. So I'm going to start off with a spoiler-free book review, then I'm going to move on to a summary and analysis. So first of all, this book centers around the protagonist, Anne Shirley, who is at the beginning shown as a very imaginative, vivacious, and someone who cannot be stopped very easily. She's also shown as very talkative as well. So the book doesn't actually start with her. The first chapter does not mention her at all. It starts off with Mrs. Rachel Lynde. From reading the first paragraph, you can tell that Mrs. Rachel Lynde is a very nosy person. She can be stern at times, but can be calmed down. It's also a way you can foreshadow. This is a paragraph-long opening sentence here. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but what I inferred from this was that I'll just read you one part of it. It was back in the woods of the old Cuthbert place. It was reputed to be an intricate headlong brook in its earlier course through those woods, with dark secrets of pool and cascade, but by the time it reached Lindy's Hollow, it was a quiet, well-conducted little stream. It also shows how Anne is going to develop throughout the story. At the beginning, she is very talkative. She's going to really try to deal with her new situations, and then towards the end she changes. So it has a double meaning there as well. So at the beginning of the book, around chapter 1, they show two unmarried siblings in their 50s and 60s, Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert, and they are growing old, and especially Matthew needs help on their farm at Green Gables. So for his assistance, he is looking to adopt a orphan boy. In return for his help on the farm, he will receive an education and a home, and Marilla is looking for the same. When Matthew reaches the train station at Avonlea, he doesn't find what he's looking for. Instead, he encounters a girl named Anne Shirley, obviously, who is a very pensive, imaginative, and vivacious girl. She's very talkative, and she can get very descriptive with what she thinks, and she's 11 years old. So he's very surprised, and you can tell from the beginning of the second chapter that he is not comfortable around girls. In fact, Anne is the first girl he is comfortable around, and he's also the first kindred spirit mentioned in the story. So I'm not going to go into all of the details here, but what I will say is that Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert were not at all expecting Anne. At the beginning, they have trouble adhering to the type of person she is, and they didn't want to keep her at all. They were even thinking of returning her, where Anne just thought of how beautiful it all was, and she didn't want to let go of Green Gables. As soon as she arrived there, she was in love with the place, of this beautiful place. However, when she was returned back to the orphanage with Mrs. Spencer, Marilla decided that they shall keep Anne Shirley, and then they really decide that they would raise her. So that is why they decide to keep her, and that's what changes everything. Anne changes the lives of these people when they discover how endearing and optimistic she is. Well, not always, but that is only when she is happy. She changes the lives of so many people around. And I'm also going to talk, if you don't want spoiler, then you can stop watching the video right here, but if you would like to continue getting deep into my analysis of the story, then you can continue watching. In addition, I would like to share a few quotes with you. These are not all of the quotes in the book that were significant, but these are some of them that I would like to share with you. So some of them are. Kindred spirits are not so scarce as I used to think. It's splendid to find out there are so many of them in the world. It's been my experience you can nearly enjoy things if you make up your mind firmly that you will. Tomorrow's a new day with no mistakes in it. I'm so glad I live in a world where there are Octobers. My life is a graveyard, buried hopes. So those were the quotes that I really felt were significant in the story. They do represent a lot of themes, and even in the story there are so many themes including growing up. These are some theme topics, and they can build upon and expand as themes. And for symbolism, there's a lot in the story, including the brook. The brook is this symbol that it should always be around. It's something that Anne really values, and it connects her with the rest of the world. And she was so happy there was a brook around, because that brook was her. And there's even a chapter in the story called Where the Brook and River Meet, because that's later on in the story when Anne starts to grow up, and that's when the brook and river have met. And there's another one, like the bend in the road. That road, there was that bend in it, and that symbolizes that there was this, in that path of hers, there was this bend, and she wasn't expecting it. She doesn't know what lies around that bend, but whatever may happen, it's going to be for something positive. Something will happen to her, but that's towards the end. So getting into the story a little bit more, I would like to say that when Anne arrived to live with Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert, she didn't know a lot about how to behave properly. Of course, she was never taught. She had developed her imagination when living with Mrs. Thomas and Mrs. Hammond, because when she lived with them, they were just cruel, and they just didn't want her around. They were very undemonstrative as well, and Anne Shirley really was unaware of what to do. That's when she developed her imagination, and she started reading a lot of books. But she never was taught any better, so that's why Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert have to teach her a lot. One thing I will say is that Marilla focuses on disciplining her, while Matthew spoils her with all that he can. So in the story, Anne befriends someone, Diana Barry, who is her bosom friend, and you can infer from bosom friend that is her best friend, and she is also a kindred spirit whom she befriends. Mrs. Rachel Lynde was definitely stern at first, but her attitude towards Anne changes throughout the story and everything. Anne also starts going to school, and you can see at the beginning her rivalry starts with Gilbert Blythe, because what happens is Gilbert teases her for her red hair, and that starts their 5-year-long rivalry, and she regrets it later on, you will see, but she's just so stubborn, she does not want to forgive him. After that, she also befriends Ruby Gillis, Jane Andrews. I would say Josie Pye is the antagonist of the story. She's one that no one can really get along with. So she's the antagonist. And also Mr. Phillips at the beginning of the story was a horrible teacher, one of the worst teachers I have ever read about. But when Miss Stacy arrives at the school, things begin to improve. So this story does include her many adventures with her friends. She also does make a lot of mistakes, but that's who Anne is, and I feel like we really need to talk about the mistakes she makes. One of the mistakes is flavoring a cake with anodyne liniment. This is all because she was perhaps thinking something else. That happens to me a lot as well when I'm distracted mid-task. So I'm going to show you some parts in this book, because there was this part when she didn't know how to behave in front of Mrs. Rachel Lynde, but then later improved when she was communicating with Miss Josephine Barry. Miss Josephine Barry was someone else she befriends later on in the story, at least I think a year into the story almost. So Miss Josephine Barry was Diana's great aunt, who is someone who didn't really want to be around anyone, but then Anne just changes, and she refers to Anne as the Anne girl, and she just loves how amusing Anne is, and she just amuses her, and that is mentioned throughout the book. Also, Mrs. Barry, Diana's mother, is someone who is very strict and stern. You can tell because when Anne accidentally gives Diana currant wine instead of raspberry cordial, she decides to break their friendship, but then later on when she rescues Minnie May Barry, Diana's younger sister, their friendship has improved. Anne and Diana do have a lot of differences. You can tell from a chapter in the book, which is the story club, that they are very different people, because Anne is very imaginative. It's very easy for her to write and craft stories, while it is more difficult for Diana to do so. However, their friendship is something that is very significant to the story. Also, later on, there are parts in this book where Anne just improves, and she always says that all of these mistakes cure her of some shortcoming or the other. So when she is 13 years old, I believe, she starts a story club with her friend Diana, and they even go out to an exhibition with Miss Josephine Barry. After which, Anne, I feel like that time is really speeded. She finishes 8th grade, 9th grade, and she starts preparing for the Queen's entrance exams, which she does very well on, though she really felt like she wasn't. After that, she gets accepted into Queen's Academy, which is, she actually went to the Avonlea school, but then Queen's Academy, she gets to earn her teaching license, and then she earns a first-class teaching license, as well as the Avery Scholarship awarded to the top student in English. She also later on declines the scholarship because after graduating Queen's Academy, Marilla, well, first of all, Matthew dies. Marilla's health is declining, and this just shows her love for her when she's giving up everything just for Marilla. So that was the story. There really was nothing else. One other thing I really liked about this book was the immense pages of description. I love the description, and I love all that Anne had to say. I know they were very, very long, but that's why I like this book. There are many themes, as I said, were presented, many points of symbolism, and if you've read this story, you would know exactly where the climax is, and that's when Matthew dies, because that's what changes Anne, and she's the protagonist. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I really didn't have much to share, and I would also like to make another announcement that I haven't been uploading videos for about 6 months. So on my birthday, I'm planning on answering a few questions that you have, so leave your questions in the comments. So if you ask questions, I will be answering them in a video. And if you enjoy this video, then please let me know, and I will see you later.